Julie, thank you very much for the very kind introduction. It's really great to see you all in person. Believe me, you look good. It is great to have you here. We need you here. So thank you for your personal commitment to equal justice under the law and to the values that make this nation the great nation it is. It's being tested today. So your lobbying here on behalf of equal justice, on behalf of the Legal Services Corporation, is so desperately needed. But I want to go back for the last 2 years because I think we've had a tremendous amount of legislative action during the last 2 years to deal with equity issues. We've seen the passage of the American Rescue Plan that dealt with the COVID pandemic, providing resources in traditionally underserved communities, providing help for state and local governments so that they could continue essential services in which the most vulnerable people were the most impacted as a result of the COVID pandemic. We then passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill that had a strong social justice equity feature to it. It provided for removing lead in our pipes, which primarily most affects the underserved communities. We had reconnecting communities that have been divided because of irresponsible transportation programs. Again, the underserved communities were the most impacted by that. The expansion of broadband, and we knew before COVID-19, but after COVID-19 it became very apparent that we have to have access to affordable quality, high-speed internet in order to have justice in our community. We passed the Safer Communities Act. Today is particularly important to talk about that with the violence we saw in our schools, to deal with behavioral health in our schools and to enact sensible gun safety legislation. We need to do more. It's well past time that we ban assault weapons, private ownership in this country. So we have a lot more that we need to do in that regard. We passed the Inflation Reduction Act that dealt with fairness in healthcare cost, making available insulin $35 a month. Again, who was the most impacted? Those that could least afford it, had diabetes. And we were able to get now no-cost vaccines, which I hope you all will get the message out about shingle shots and to make sure that people take advantage of what we had in the bill. And we made the largest investment ever in climate. And I mention that because here in the United States and around the world, it is the underserved communities, it's the low-income communities, it's our vulnerable people that are most affected by climate change. So in every one of these cases, there was a social justice component. I chaired a small business committee, and we've been singularly focused on expanding small business entrepreneurship opportunities to traditionally underserved communities. I was with the president a little bit earlier today in regards to his announcements concerning women businesses in our country and the great growth we saw last year and his increasing the number of women's business centers in our community. So we've been focused on providing justice over the last 2 years. But we have to recognize that we have a significant hurdle in regards to equal justice under the law. I'm a lawyer, and I believe that I have a special responsibility. As the guardians of our legal system, the legal profession has a responsibility to make sure that we do have equal access to justice in this country. So a few years ago, when I was in the House of Representatives, I chaired the Maryland Legal Services Corporation. It gave me an opportunity to see firsthand the services that we are providing in our community. I led a study similar to the one that you just reported on the gaps on providing legal services. And we found at that time, this was during the late 80s, early 90s, that in Maryland, we had a significant gap on the people who needed legal services and were able to get civil legal services. And it made a huge difference. The outcome of their experience with our legal system was very much dependent upon having adequate legal representation. that's things that I think you all know. But when we have such a gap and such a difference, we don't have equal justice under the law. So we did some things to try to change that. We tried to institute pro bono, that all lawyers have a responsibility to handle pro bono cases, and we report on that every year in our state of Maryland. I was very proud of that recommendation. But perhaps the recommendation I am the most proud was the institution in Maryland, law schools, where every law student had exposure to clinical experience, handling poverty cases as law students. And Maryland's clinical law programs are now well known nationally as one of the strongest programs we have in this country. Lawyers have a responsibility. We have to do more. But government has a responsibility as well. And that's where we have not lived up to our commitment. The funding for the Legal Services Corporation has not kept up anywhere near the needs, haven't even held its own over a long period of time. We need to do better. So I am authoring a letter with my colleagues to the appropriators to provide robust funding for the Legal Services Corporation. It's critically important. We're going to do our share in Maryland as lawyers. We need to do more. I would urge all of us to do more. We have incredible organizations that are out there to help in regards to our women's law centers and the disability law centers that we have. They're all critically important and get funding through our collective efforts. So you're here because you care. And if you're lawyers, you have, I think, a fiduciary responsibility to help our challenged system do much better than it's doing today. I am proud to be on your team, and I thank you for what you do to make our country a fairer country. Equal justice under the law needs to have a meaning. Recently in Maryland, we elected a new governor, Governor Wes Moore. His saying is, leave no one behind. We've left too many people behind in our legal system. It's time that we take major steps to correct that injustice. Your presence today makes that much more of a reality. Thank you all very much.